What's up, guys? Welcome to Forensic Friday, where I tell you one true crime case that was solved using forensic science, all while doing, that's right, my makeup. Today's video will be featuring the Fade into Hue palette from Colourpop. Every time I open this thing, the light just like blinds it. Ooh-wee. All the other products used in this video will be linked in the description below. Please read the disclaimer. I am in no way, shape, or form a professional makeup artist, beauty guru, MUA, nothing like that of a sort. I am just the average girl at home like you, playing in makeup and talking about true crime. So if you love true crime and makeup, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of my future episodes. Let's get into this deadly Valentine's Day look and story. This story takes place on Valentine's Day 2001. A woman named Susan Hamilton was getting prepared for her busy day that she had ahead of her. Susan was married to a doctor named John Hamilton, and he was an John was an obstetrician, and Susan worked in his office. She actually ran his office, and Susan was like the typical trophy wife. She was gorgeous. She was very well educated, very well spoken. People liked her. She was super smart and intelligent. Susan was due to go into work. She had a really busy day ahead of her, but she never showed up to work that day. In fact, she never even left the house. According to Dr. Hamilton, he was performing surgery all morning long. When he got done, he decided to drop by the house and bring Susan some flowers for Valentine's Day. Once he got to the house, he found that the back door was wide open. And upstairs in the master bathroom, he found his wife, Susan, unconscious on the bathroom floor. According to Dr. Hamilton, he called 911 and he tried to revive her, but it was too late. Police assumed that Susan's attacker had escaped through the back door because it was open, so they figured he came in through that way and he probably escaped through that way. But it was strange because none of the neighbors said that they saw or heard anything. So police was just going over every theory possible. They thought, maybe a burglar came in and attacked this woman and was trying to steal some cash, some jewelry, some things, and maybe that's what happened. Maybe it was a burglar, and perhaps Susan just happened to be home, and so they wouldn't be able to leave her alive because she probably saw them. So this is what police were thinking, but I'm thinking it's her homeboy husband that did it. I don't know. What do you guys think? This was highly likely because it was very well off, affluent neighborhood, so it is possible that a burglar tried to break in to steal some valuables, and this was very popular in Oklahoma back then. By the way, I don't know if I said this, but they're in Oklahoma, so this at that time was something that was going on. As an obstetrician, Dr. Hamilton performed abortions in his clinic. So then police started to think perhaps Susan was targeted by anti-abortion protesters or something. At that time in that neighborhood, there was a lot of anti-abortion, protesters, and they had gone around the neighborhood and posted flyers saying wanted, like a legit wanted poster saying wanted Dr. John Hamilton for murdering children. Can you imagine if someone did that today? I'm sure they do, but that's insane. And the fact that Susan and John were kind of unapologetic about the work that they didn't really make things better with the people in the neighborhood. This was a very religious town and neighborhood that they lived in. It was a lot of church-going type people, so they really didn't believe in these types of procedures taking place. The fact that Susan and John were just so blatant about it and so unapologetic about it and just, you know, openly doing it and not even trying to hide what they did made things worse. Just like my eyebrows and myself, like how I just made my eyebrows make things worse. Okay. So you can imagine, like, this types of procedures was just not sitting well with these kind of people. Like, no. So at the police station, Dr. John Hamilton was, well, he appeared to be very, very grief-stricken. He was absolutely in utter shock, as how I would explain it. He was in utter shock. He was becoming so undone and dismayed by what had happened. He was just like almost passing out, like, oh my God, please help me, please help me, please help me. He just kept saying, please help me, over and over and over again, and as if he was gonna like pass out or die or something. So police went back to the scene of the crime because they were hoping that, you know, they could get a little bit more evidence using forensic science, which they did. Susan and John Hamilton had been married for 15 years, and it was the second marriage for both. Police questioned, you know, friends and family members, and everyone said Susan and John were an amazing couple, that they were very much in love, and that Susan was, you know, gorgeous. She was beautiful. She was intelligent and smart. She was very much like the country club type of successful woman, and everyone loved Dr. Hamilton, and they absolutely adored Susan. Now, when doing Susan's autopsy, the medical examiner found no signs whatsoever of sexual assault, so they kind of ruled that out. They did find was that Susan had been strangled with some neckties and her head banged on the floor many, many times. So her death was caused by repeated blows to her head, so I believe that's called blunt trauma, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. While searching for clues, police found that an anti-abortion group was actually planning to have a protest right out front of the Hamiltons' home. So as you guys can see from the jump, they're kind of like attacking this whole anti-abortion group thing. They just think it's all has to do with that. Police found that the house had been picketed, so as well as these group got like a permit to actually picket the house. It's one thing to picket a house, but then to get a permit to picket the house, that means that there was some higher up people that was involved in that to like actually okay it. I don't know how that works, but I would assume you'd have to get like permission to get a permit, maybe from the mayor or something. This permit had been obtained within a month of Susan's death. When searching the home, investigators found no evidence of a break-in, but they did find one important clue. On the kitchen counter, police found the card that John had purchased and written in for his wife for Valentine's Day. The card read, "We are important, loving, caring people together. My life would be incomplete without you. I love you, John." But the card Susan gave to her husband had an entirely different tone than what John was saying to her. In fact, it had a completely different message to him. Now it's time to go into the palettes. But anyway, back to the story. Now, one of the captions she wrote on the card, in the card said, "Obviously, I bought this card before last Monday." That's not good. When a woman started out like that in a Valentine's card, is not good. She started it out with obviously. So when you open the card and start to read it, it says, "I bought this card 2 weeks ago, so it just doesn't seem appropriate now." I'd be scared. But she did say, "I love you," and then she signed it, Susan Hamilton. But that's like all she said. Police began to think, obviously, something happened during this time within that 2 weeks that she would have to point it out in her Valentine's Day card. Something was up. So Dr. Hamilton told the police that they had a fight about money, but police discovered that there was more to it than just that. There was accusations that John had been having an affair with one of his clients who was a stripper. She was a topless dancer. Police found that Susan had discovered that her husband was having this affair, and she found that he had been calling this number more than 60 times. So that was a huge red flag to her. She was kind of on to him at that point. So this was the deal breaker for Susan. Like, no, this was the worst thing. She was a very, very strong woman, and she was not about to have that. Like, this was something that she did not want in her relationship, and she was not gonna put up with that. What am I doing, guys? I don't even know. Can somebody help me? She found out that John had went to this girls club. He had a lap dance for about $100, and he did it most likely on more than one occasion. So of course, you know, Dr. Hamilton, he tried to deny, you know, that anything was actually going on and that it didn't mean anything. But with so many calls and all of the circumstantial evidence, Susan was not buying it. No, there was no real evidence that he had done it, that he had like actually had an affair. But, you know, it didn't matter at that point because Susan believed that he had done it. So, you know, at that point it was already too late. It didn't really matter if he had or hadn't. At any moment, you guys can like step in and be like, Zahara, what the actual F did you think you were doing? Right before the murder, Susan Hamilton had made John write a letter to this girl telling her that he could no longer be her doctor at all anymore. The media also started to have their own theories about Dr. Hamilton. They started picking apart his 911 call to the police that day. So the reporters thought that if you listen to the tape over and over and over again, that it started to sound really, really strange. The things that he was saying, the way that he was saying it, the order in which he said certain things in to them just came off as very, very bizarre. And the reporters started to think that something was just not right here. So the local TV station, KWTV, they sent the tapes to a company specializing in computer voice stress analysis. Now, the test charted the micro tremors in Dr. Hamilton's voice. It showed no excessive blood flow impacting Dr. Hamilton's voice, which means he wasn't stressed out while he was giving that call. Which, if your wife is laying on the bathroom floor, you should be. Fired. Police started to theorize that Dr. Hamilton was not stressed out when he made those 911 calls. At least he wasn't as stressed out as he should be. So police started to theorize that Dr. Hamilton had rehearsed that 911 call. So whether he did or didn't, you know, rehearse this or commit the crime, it just made them think that there was definitely more to the story that they didn't know. Investigators started to question the unusual behavior that Dr. Hamilton displayed while in questioning. Police said that his emotions seemed to be out of control, like one way or the other. Sometimes he would start crying and, you know, then he would just stop out of nowhere, and then he would go back to like moving all over the place and just then stop and just be calm. Like, it was just all types of crazy frantic type movement, but it was just very, very, very bizarre, and nothing was stable about it. You know, there was no like, I'm a grief-stricken man, yeah, but then like stick with that. And this was one of the concerns that the police had, because they said that it seemed like he was acting or something like that. But Dr. Hamilton had an alibi for the murder. He was in surgery all morning long with different patients, and he had tons of witnesses and alibis to corroborate his story. So obviously he can't be in two places at the same time, or could he? So to find out the truth, investigators enlisted the help of a blood splatter analyst expert. Now, the night of Susan's death, when the medical emergency workers had arrived, Dr. Hamilton was covered in his wife's blood. Now, this isn't unusual. Obviously, he was the first to the scene of the crime. He came in, he found his wife dead. He probably tried to do CPR. He probably picked her up. He probably cradled her. He was probably in distraught trying to save her life, and, blood got on him. However, some of the blood found on John's shirt was non-explanatory. Obviously, there was going to be some blood on him, but what the blood splatter analyst thought was very strange was you wouldn't expect to see blood splatter. The blood would have been more smeared on him. If it was from him cradling his wife and holding her, picking her up, or touching her, and he had arrived after the incident took place, there should not have been actual blood splatter patterns on his shirt, because a blood splatter pattern can only exist from the blunt trauma that was enforced on the victim. So that is how the splatter would splash up. So that meant that he had to have been there during the murder. And with further investigation, they found on Dr. Hamilton's shoes were tiny blood drops, almost invisible to the naked eye. These were suspicious not just because of the shape, but also because of the angle in which the blood had landed onto the shoes. There were some coming down from the toe from an angle above, like they said it was around 40 to 50 degrees. So they were trying to figure this out. There was no way that Susan's body was picked up and then dropped back down so hard that it got blood splatter all over Dr. Hamilton's shoe. With the story that Dr. Hamilton gave them, they couldn't explain it. It was on his sleeves, it was down his arms, it was literally everywhere. There was also blood found on his cuffs, and he at some point had suggested that he hit his arms or something. The blood splatter found on Dr. Hamilton's shoe was a result of medium velocity impact blood splatter, kind that you would find in the result of a beating. After this came out, they also found blood splatter on the inside of his right cuff. This was the most telling of all of the blood splatter, because it meant that he had direct contact with Susan at that time. I mean, 4 inches up inside your right shirt cuff. Come on, sir. You did it. You did it! It was direct splatter, which meant that the blood landed directly on his shirt. So it wasn't like he smudged it from somewhere or wiped onto his shirt. It landed from the victim onto his shirt. So I think that was like, case closed, sir. I would be arresting his ass. I would be arresting his ass immediately. For the blood splatter to get up inside of his cuff meant that it had to have been traveling at some sort of speed. I mean, for it to get inside, it had to be coming at an angle that was capable of missing the wrist and hitting the inside of the sleeve. I can't think of any other angle except above the victim. Police came to the conclusion that the only way that that could have happened was from someone that was standing over the victim and had the weapon in his hand and beating the victim. That's the only way. Scientists performed DNA tests on each and every single stain on Dr. Hamilton's clothes and his shoes. And of course, it was all Susan's blood. Luminol revealed even more bloodstains on the inside of Dr. Hamilton's car. There was blood found on the steering wheel. There was blood found on the driver's seat, on the left edge of the driver's seat. There was hair and tissue found on the floor of the car. I mean, this dude, like, I don't know what he did with her before. Like, I'm just trying to figure out, did he kill her in the car and then drag her in the house? Like, what happened, sir? Investigators found what they thought may have been the murder weapon. The maid said that a marble figure from the Hamiltons' bathroom was missing. And communication records found that Dr. Hamilton actually was not in the hospital performing surgery the day of the murder. he started getting pages from the hospital that he should get there now because the second patient had already been put under anesthesia by the anesthesiologist. You guys know what I mean. The second patient had been put to sleep already, so they were paging him to come in like immediately. How in the hell are you at the hospital, you know, all morning working with patients when the hospital is paging you to come in? The blood splatter evidence proved that Dr. Hamilton was in fact home. Dr. John Hamilton was arrested and charged with murder. Dr. Hamilton started to like really freak out when he's arrested. He literally was going nuts. He was like, please, can you leave the door open to the room while he was waiting to be questioned. He was just like, I'm gonna go nuts in here, like, please, I just feel like I'm trapped, I'm in a cage. And the investigators were like, well, that's the whole point, you know. So what did exactly happen in the days leading up to Susan's murder? Well, investigators found out that John Hamilton was making payments to others without Susan's knowledge. He had actually been sliding money to one of his children from a previous marriage that Susan didn't even know about. She found out he had been lying to her about that, and she went absolutely insane, like ballistic about that. She actually told him if he ever did it again, she would leave him. And at this point, Susan is thinking he's lying about so many things, and she was a very black and white type of person. God knows what else he is like lying about. I think she was just like over it, like, that's it. You done lied about all these different things. I don't know that I can even trust you anymore, so you're out. And he couldn't handle it. He just really couldn't handle it. When they spoke to the exotic dancer, she said that she believed that he was trying to kind of work up the nerve to ask her out on a date, but that he never actually did it, and that nothing ever actually occurred between them outside of like a professional relationship. You know, he would come to her place of work, which just happened to be a topless dancer, a strip club, and she would obviously go to see him. So, but she says nothing really ever occurred, but that she knew that he liked her and that he was kind of working up the nerve to push things in that direction. My hearts are crooked on my eyes, but you know, this is a crooked Valentine story, so why not have a crooked makeup look to go with it, I guess. Prosecutors believe that the couple exchanged cards that day and that they had a brief discussion, probably an argument, about what Susan had written in her card, and that kind of prompted this altercation between the two of them, which led to Susan's brutal murder. Now, the evidence suggests that Dr. Hamilton did in fact go to the hospital in the morning. He performed one surgery and then returned home, possibly to reconcile with Susan. I mean, he had brought flowers and everything. Prosecutors believe that in his rage and anger, Dr. Hamilton took neckties from his closet and strangled her. We have our lead investigator here with us on the case. We're so grateful to have our lead investigator here, Lucy, to explain this case to us and give us more information. So thank you so much, Lucy, for being with us today. They think that once he strangled her and she passed out, he threw her and banged her head against the floor, and then he started to hit her with the blunt object, probably that statue that was missing. This would have created the medium velocity blood splatter found on the inside of his right cuff of the shirt he was wearing that day, as well as his shoes. So before he could clean up, the hospital paged him to come in for the next surgery. So he decided to take his bloody clothes and the murder weapon and head to the hospital, leaving the back door open. They believe that's how Susan's blood and hair got on the inside of his car. Now, how Dr. Hamilton disposed of his bloody trousers and the murder weapon remains a mystery. No one really knows what he actually did with it. It was never located. At the hospital, Dr. Hamilton washed up and scrubbed down for his next surgery, thinking that he disposed of any, blood or evidence that was left behind. However, he was still wearing the same pair of shoes. So when Dr. Hamilton went home, he called 911 and performed his amazing rendition. But it wasn't amazing enough to fool the speech experts. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it did not help that Dr. Hamilton's own blood splatter analyst expert agreed with the prosecutor's expert. Thanks to forensic science and some good police work, Dr. John Hamilton was convicted of his wife's murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. What do you guys think about this case and my makeup look? Please let me know in the comments down below. If you like videos like these, check out my last episode. I will leave it linked on the screen right here. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you don't want to miss out on any of my future episodes. And I'll see you guys next Friday with another Forensic Friday episode. Bye!